Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Cloudy with a Chance of Insights, the bi-weekly or fortnightly podcast around all elements of the Microsoft Cloud, from Azure to M365 to Dynamics. Although I've said this a couple of times, we're still waiting for Dynamics story, but one week we will have a Dynamics update for you to cover off. This week, as you'll notice, we are one man down. So unfortunately, David has not been able to join us today. We wish him all the best, and hopefully he will be with us for the next recording. This week, as a result, we're going to have a slightly condensed episode. So Cyrus has got 3 topics to discuss. So one of which is around a Microsoft tool that helped discover or find a serious macOS flaw, new Microsoft Entra app management policies, and a Patch Tuesday update from him. For various reasons, which I'm not going to go into, I've been a little bit sort of away from work-related activities this week. So I'm not going to be talking too much about technical elements, but I am going to go and revert back to a favourite topic, which is the UK and a recent announcement back, I think it was on Wednesday this week, in relation, I suppose, to Trump's visit here, around Microsoft investment in the UK over the next couple of years. So I think because of the way that we're going to structure this, I will kick off with that summary first, and then we'll pass across to Cyrus to run through his 3 updates. So now it's been an interesting week from a sort of UK business perspective. So I think in total this week, there's been like $120, $130 million worth of investments from US organizations into the UK over the next X number of years. I think it's up to 10 years in some instances. What I found, and I do need to find another adjective to use, but I found this quite interesting, is that in the scale of investment, what they're reckoning is it's only going to actually create 7,000 new jobs. And I think that is the way of things as we go forward, because obviously if we're investing in data centers, I suppose it doesn't actually really take that much to run a data center in terms of manpower once it's actually built. So it is interesting the scale of investment versus the actual impact to jobs in the region. But anyway, coming off the back of that, Microsoft has announced a roughly $30 billion investment into their cloud services in the UK, and that is interesting in some respects because we've discussed this multiple times over the last few episodes around sovereign cloud and around making sure that data, specifically sort of AI related elements, stay within the country's borders or digital borders, if you prefer. And I think that is something that is, and we've talked about this in the past, and we, in a sense, and I think Cyrus and David actually mentioned this in our internal chat, we've actually sort of preempted some of these sort of stories as part of the podcast, as just in the sort of general chatting between ourselves. But anyway, 30 million from Microsoft, which includes 15 billion in capital expenditure to build the country's largest supercomputer, which allegedly will have 23,000 NVIDIA GPUs in it, which is a staggering number. That it's just, you struggle sometimes, well, I do anyway, to sort of get my head around some of the numbers that they're talking about here. And again, one of the things that's been pulled out around here frequently is around the sovereignty. So the idea being that this information, this data, this processing, whatever you want to call it, is going to be constrained, contained, whatever you want to say, within the UK. Now, I think that's it's something that requires, I think, a little bit of thought going forward about actually how that's going to work, how that's going to play out. I mean, are we going to see a similar deal to what happened with the OneGov, which we actually covered in the last episode in the US, where it's basically a series of discounts that applied, and that's where the investment applies, or actually is it investment to build things and create local jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we need to keep an eye on this over the next few months and see where that actually leads to. But if you add that to, I think Google invested, I think it was either 6 or 8 billion as well a couple of weeks ago in AI infrastructure. I don't know. I think it's good news in a sense, but I do worry that we just end up having huge amounts of data centers everywhere and no real impact into anything else. But anyway, enough of that. I'm going to now pass it across to Cyrus, who's going to start off with the macOS floor, and he will wrap up with the Patch Tuesday updates. Unless, of course, and I didn't really give you the opportunity to answer this question, Cyrus, unless you actually had any thoughts on that whole investment and sort of data center and AI news updates that I just sort of went through.
Actually, no, thank you. I have to stress to the audience that we don't prepare those podcasts. A bit last minute, Richard is chasing us to say, what's your subject? So normally we should discuss earlier, but I'm so happy, Richard, you mentioned the impact on the jobs. That's something I've looking for, even in France when I used to live there. When actually Amazon was opening a new factory to a specific region and the promise of more jobs, and actually was sometimes half true. It was more like giving the local infrastructure more a profit. So it's the business model or the way they decide the investment is a bit nebulous for me, but very very interesting. So not much thought from what you shared, but maybe it's the agenda is a bit like we are aligned with those news today. I saw that Satya Nadella announced similar news, but in the biggest AI data center in the Wisconsin, I think it's in the US, and he was talking about 10 times more powerful than the most powerful supercomputer that exists today. The length of the optical fiber is like enough to do the 4.5 the circle of the Earth. So those are big numbers, a bit to impress, but how practically is going to work. And what you said about sovereignty is actually what can make a difference against the big performance is now in the UK, potentially governments, potentially, I wouldn't say defense, but some sector that rely on those AI to learn specifically for their needs. Now they can have more comfort to use that. And that the impact we'll probably not see now, but maybe next 2 years. That's why sometimes the big numbers, they shock, and then it's more like in the future we can see. So it's hard to assess. But yeah, that's my 2 cents, if you can say.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting also to see or to know whether this investment was always planned, or whether this is something that's come up out of those meetings that have been had this week. And I know that there has been some discussions around some of the investments that have been sort of muted in the US, where actually they were the old programs that they just sort of publicizing to sort of show that things are moving in the right direction. But yeah, that's probably way too political for this particular podcast. Before I do hand it across to you, we've talked about the fact that we sort of preempted some of this sovereign cloud conversations with one of the episodes we had back, I don't know, 3 months ago or so. There was a comment I think I threw out in the last episode about Visual Studio 2022, where I was actually surprised that it is at that version, and why hasn't it been updated yet? And I think David, I can't remember if it was David or you, actually pinged me a link to say that Visual Studio 2026 has got its first preview release. So again, I don't know whether people might be listening to us or we're something's happening, but we talk about Visual Studio 2022 and why there isn't a new version, and suddenly there is a new version out in preview at least. So who knows? We don't have any inside information on this, even through the partnership that we have with IBM. And I suppose that does mean I now have to mention the fact that although we both work for IBM, all the views on this podcast are our own, not representative of IBM, et cetera, et cetera. So usual disclaimer component there. But yeah, there you go. So we've predicted the future once again on this pod, if nothing else.
That's why I'm very sad that David is not in this episode, because that is very funny. So if you guys don't remember the last episode, Richard was saying that actually he preferred Visual Studio, the real one. Sorry, I forgot the name, 2022. And David and I were saying, no, VS Code is better. A bit of banter. And I even imply, I think, that this is finished and now you have to go to the VS Code. And Richard was saying, actually, I used to love like a C#, and so I prefer the real one, but hey, I have to practice. I remember finishing the episode, and a few days later, I saw a like on LinkedIn from David, and there was this big announcement out of nowhere, and we don't have any intel again, as you said, of the enhanced SharePoint Python on Visual Studio 26 with native AI support on all this kind of. Probably data center will probably help locally for the UK, so you can. I don't know how to what extent is going to be interconnected and native, but that's again, it's not the first time we do that in that podcast. We literally predict the future for cloud sovereignty. Also, like when they announced, I think it was Azure. No, I forgot the name for sovereign cloud. The Azure
Local.
Azure Local, yeah, 365. Azure Local 365. Why they? So it's we should maybe. Richard is the fourth time. We should maybe complain more about things we don't like here, especially here. So they appear sometimes later. Yeah.
But I know we are sort of digressing. I'm keeping you from your topics, and people might be getting very frustrated with me. But no, I actually did download Visual Studio 2022, and I actually wrote some code in C# on Tuesday, I think, whilst I was in waiting for someone to come out of an appointment. So there you go. It's coming back very, very slowly. I haven't opened it for a long time, but the muscle memory is still there to a certain extent. But anyway, enough of that. And over to you, Cyrus.
Yeah, I apologize for the digression. So there's a researcher that found a serious vulnerability in his macOS Sequoia, I think, while they were using a tool that triggered me from Microsoft. It's called ProcDump, and it's from so it's ProcDump for Mac, but this ProcDump is from Sysinternals, and it was developed by Mark Rusinovich. And actually, I follow him on LinkedIn, and I encourage everyone actually who's interested in security or even Microsoft in general, follow this guy. And I think, Richard, you know him better than me because you worked directly for Microsoft. But he's a superstar into the research world, because Sysinternals is actually, I think most of it or all of it developed by this single person. And the tool is used by like everything. If you do hack the box, like whatever service you use, it's mandatory. And until like last few days, I didn't know that tool was also on Mac. And you can see that tool designed for Windows hardening and discovery was used perfectly to discover that actually that issue. So how it works, they create crash dumps for debugging, right? So while testing, that person noticed something really odd, and it could dump memory from the protected processes, even with the Apple's security feature turned on. So that led to the discovery of the CV 2025. I have the note here, 2025, 24204. So that's the one if you want to Google it. And it was fixed already. So if you didn't update your Mac, I encourage you to do it, because that's normally never happened. It was a mistake from Apple developers. But what's interesting is in the details, macOS had given this built-in tool, G-Core, and it's a powerful entitlement by mistake. So that's what they've done. But what's interesting is the attacker could, again, dump the process memory, pull sensitive data from keychain, and bypass some of the TCC protection. So take the news for what it is. For me, it was very shocking, because we say G-Core, secure memory dump, and keychain. So those are known to be really secure. I don't think it was exploited, because it was discovered fast enough. I have to do more research. But yeah, it's very interesting. On this Sysinternals, the proc dump for macOS was released, I think, from the GitHub last November, so less than a year. So I'm going to install that and try to see what I can discover on Mac. It's just fun. To go faster, I mean, if you, Richard, if you want to interrupt me anytime,
don't worry, I will do.
Okay.
But no, it's interesting. So carry on, Cyrus.
Thank you. So the next news is on I saw that floating. There's plenty of news again, and how a shortlist is when I see first a hype, Second, a hype that is interesting me. And thirdly is the impact, the real impact. Because sometimes, news are shared all the time. We are bombarded with like news on this new feature. And actually this one, I wanted to do a digression within that news. I'm going to be really quick. So it's the new Microsoft Entra app management policy. And it's how to quickly fix the basics that get us breached. So there's a set of application management policies. You can configure in Entra to stop risky app behaviors before they start. So these policies let you block, for example, bad things like long-lived or weak app secrets, or even completely removing the ability to create new app secrets. So keeping the previous one, but blocking the ability. And it's a conversation I have all the time with like pre-sales or like people asking me about Entra, what's new, etc., what you can do. And I had this moment of like self-reflection of why I was excited by that. I was imagining Steve Jobs doing something, a reverse Steve Jobs. Let's call him like that. A reverse Steve Jobs come on the stage for a keynote, and instead of announcing new feature, he come and say, that feature you really liked, I'm going to remove it, and everyone applauds. That's how a security person feels. We are literally happy that feature are getting turned off, and it's unfortunate because it's not a new feature. It's nothing that will help us do more. It's literally helping us lock down more. So yeah, we have security people have a crazy mind. But yeah, so there's a list of things I have here of what that thing can do. So for example, you force, for this case, instead of app secret, use certificates and or actually manage identities, because I know you prefer that, Richard, and actually it's Microsoft's recommendation. When workloads are within Azure, you force the use of managed identities. So it helps admins being more flexible in the way they manage, and at the same time quicker to resolve instead of using PowerShell and requiring a security consultant to help them. No, they can do that now natively from the portal. And I can digress, but I see the time. There's a lot to say why client secret are bad. Eventually we can discuss that, but I don't think that's interesting because you know that already. I think the audience know that. But yeah, it's just like, long story short, client secret is like a big password that actually can be leaked. It can be seen in logs, and is a password without MFA because it's like a system. So there's one of the reasons. There's plenty of things they can do in that new thing. If you don't want to comment on that, I have the third news. It is a bit more, let's say, there's more things to say. The third one is Patch Tuesday. So whoever listens is going to say, okay, Patch Tuesday is like something that exists in 2015 at least. If I remember correctly, it was in Windows 10. What's really special about this one? So there is things special, like there's 80 fixes and 8 critical, which is like 10%. And there was this word again, SMB, that triggered me. And I saw a person on, like it was a good thought leadership comments, I think, and they were explaining why we should not just do Patch Tuesday and patch and forget. That was the term that was used, and I've seen some conversation, and I wanted to just like share that conversation a bit here. We almost, like when you manage devices at scale, or when you are a CISO or whatever position you have plenty of spreadsheet you go through, and you say, okay, patch management is something known. You have vulnerability management, and there's plenty of things that is established and known. But unfortunately, when you see the word SMB, you can't just say patch and forget because it keep coming back. So one to pay attention is this Windows SMB elevation of privilege. So I'll give the CVE. CVE 25.55234. I mean, you just type SMB Patch Tuesday in September, you're going to find it. It was public before the patch day. Microsoft guidance says this isn't just apply and forget. You should harden SMB to stop relay attacks, meaning requiring the SMB signings and or this extended protection authentication, which is EPA. And I know it's not really in place in plenty of enterprise, but again, it's the occasion when you have such Patch Tuesday to have a moment to think about that. And there's a new things about this Patch Tuesday. They added some auditing, so new events that can help find clients that won't support those stronger settings. So that's all good. And there's other notable items in this same patch. I'm going to review those quickly. Azure networking, there's like this new vulnerability CVSS 10, but that's handled by Microsoft side, so no customer action. Windows NTLM, surprised to see this one. So this is again elevation privilege. Maybe you can use Kerberos instead of NTLM going forward. BitLocker issue fixes, and like you have to, it's questioning about your pre-boot setup. So there's things you can do. When you see a patch, normally you can put a process behind every patch, what you can improve to prevent that. I'm not going to read them all. Is HPC, like a high performance compute, like the pack, how you can prevent remote code execution. Treat those as critical, but again, this is a mindset that you try to put in place. For the SMB, like you need to discuss, okay, we patch now, but this is going to happen again. And if you remember, one of the first big ransomware, I think it was WannaCry, and this was based on SMB 1, which we don't normally use anymore. But SMB always freak me out. Always, like when I see the word, honestly, I always have this kind of, hack the box mindset, what you can do. And it becomes so easy now at scale of AI, to just quickly read the CVE. And if you do a bit of like red teaming or training on security, you can already map how you can exploit this. So it's a cat and mouse game, like with whoever is going to protect first. I'm going to finish with that. How you can fix at scale, of course, my love for Intune. So Intune, you can, for example, push the SMB signing via setting catalogs. So local policies, and you go to security, and then you have like I think it's something called digitally signed certificate. You put as always or enabled or whatever Intune language is used in that thing, and you don't have to use GPO. And of course, you have plenty of news about the GPO, and you can help yourself with Defender vulnerability management, which will surface misconfiguration and help prioritize these settings, etc. So, Patch Tuesday, mapping every process and using the native Microsoft tool that should be in place to actually remediate. There's more to say, but again, I'm going to repeat myself on digress here. I put plenty of notes. I was like, okay, no, I'm not going to talk about all of those, but the SMB example was cool because you can literally put an ongoing feedback loop on how you patch, on how you discuss through the patch, not just like go through the auto patch and goes to all the rings and is going to. This is the same process, but you must put humans or an AI to at least try to go faster than the attackers.
Yeah, I think that is one of the challenges that you have within cybersecurity at the moment is that, and I think there's a fairly well trodden phrase that I'm sort of just probably mangling somewhat, is that in cybersecurity, as a defender, in inverted commas, you have to be lucky all the time. An attacker has to be lucky, and I use the term loosely here once, and then that's it. So you're always playing that sort of catch-up position in cybersecurity, and then you couple that with the lack of resources, et cetera, and then you know that you're always on a bit of an uphill battle in terms of trying to defend your estates against those attackers that are out there, which is one of the reasons why it's a very interesting area to work in. But yeah, I digress slightly.
And that digression triggered my auto digression, so I'm going to censor myself. But it was about what you said about the lack of resource. There was I'm going to censor myself here. Or should I? Should I jump into the...
Go for it. Because I mean, I think that the lack of resources at the moment in cyber is a big issue. And I know people talk about it a lot. And I know that's one of the reasons why the AI is being pushed so heavily within the sort of cyber security space, because that in theory makes up for some of the lack of resources. But anyway, yeah, no, go on, have your diversion.
No, it actually what you said is actually relevant, because yes, there's a huge push in the AI security, and I think it's you share that news. I think on your LinkedIn. So I invite people to not to follow us only, but follow your LinkedIn on those news. It was about IBM acquiring for 500 million an AI cybersecurity
Yes.
company. And very interesting, the very interesting business model they had, how they got acquired. It's not that digression. It's also Microsoft pushing for the security copilot. Now, my concern was all this side conversation about, okay, now there's AI. There is a known, I believe, that lack of resource, but there's also a lack of competent, maybe resource, or maybe opportunities, because there's so many fields in security, and a lot. It's my feeling. Maybe I'm not the right person for that, but there was a lot of, in my personal network, people converting to IT security and learning SOC analyst, red teaming because it's cool, and hacking. But those are almost all automated now. SOC analyst level 1, those AI tools can give report at the speed of light. So CISOs with like experience is lacking, competent CISOs, and you have people like us, like who can be like more polyvalent, or know how the technology interconnect with like this hybrid world, and this is really lacking. So if anyone is trying to convert to cybersecurity, there is the cool cybersecurity hack the box things, but try to see the job market, because that's it's very complex. I see plenty of people complaining, and it's breaking my heart, because I cannot do anything. So I receive CVs and this kind of thing. So it's just the situation.
Well, I think I brought this up in as either last time's episode or one of the previous episodes, in that I'm not sure. Again, so apologies for the listeners if that I'm repeating myself here, but I'm certainly not sure that the path I took into the role that I'm in at the moment is available anymore, because that sort of junior developer IT admin, which was the first couple of roles that I had in my career, I don't think they realistically exist anymore. If you look at Copilot in Azure, or Security Copilot, or GitHub Copilot, even and that's in the Microsoft world. Let alone if you look at Claude and OpenAI and Google, etc. Those sort of entry level positions are now being sort of replaced by AI. And you have that question about whether that's good for not so much the job market, but that sort of career progression, or how do you break into IT. But you also have this concern, and I saw this around that level 1 SOC analyst sort of role that you just mentioned, is that a lot of the sort of security AI tools are now sort of auto classifying alerts that come into the SIM tool. And I'm thinking, okay, that's great. Yes, if it helps reduce the noise, and that means I can focus only on, 10% of the messages or the alerts that are coming into my SIM tool, and ignore the 90%. But where does that sort of accuracy come into play? And again, if I was, a nefarious attacker, I'd be looking at ways that I could fool the AI system into thinking that the alert that's coming through is innocuous and I can get rid of it, so that it doesn't get picked up by a human in that 10% of messages that get through. So I don't know. I do have and perhaps it's just my age group, who knows, but I do have that slight concern that we're automating things that perhaps we shouldn't be automating to the level that I think we are.
No, I deep down I agree with you, and I was probably a bit extreme saying that this is fully automated. It's obviously not, and yes, you will need always the critical thinking of a human. At least it's less difficult to spoof.
Yeah, I mean, it's not 100% automated, but I mean, I've seen the claims of some of the AI sort of security tools saying we will reduce and auto resolve 90% of the messages you're getting in, or the incidents. And I look at that and go, no, thank you. I don't know how you get around that, but I'd want to have some sort of certainly an extended validation period to say, actually, yes, your AI tool is getting it right. But then you have to continually do that, because at the moment, you just go down to the zero trust sort of motto, isn't it? Trust but verify. So how do you continually verify that your AI tool that's doing all those level one sort of triage and responses is actually doing the job that you want it to be doing, and things aren't sort of slipping through the net?
That's
But
absolutely
anyway,
correct.
on that depressing note,
No.
Anybody who is still with us and is still listening, really appreciate your attention, your time, etc., etc. Again, I should have done this right at the start, but please drop us a like, subscribe, click on for the notifications so that you don't miss me waffling on about non-important subjects for 10 minutes every other week. And Cyrus and David giving us really serious inputs into what's going on within the Microsoft world. So if you want to not to miss that, then please do subscribe, follow, etc., etc. Otherwise, Cyrus, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to this.
No, not necessarily. It was a nice conversation. I missed David, unfortunately. Hopefully we catch up with him next time.
Yes, so we wish him all the best, and hopefully he will be with us for the next recording, which will be roughly in 2 weeks' time. But I think that's all that's left for me to say is, as usual, thank you to Cyrus for joining and providing his insight into the cybersecurity world. Thank you for David, who I'm sure is sitting there wishing us the best for this recording. And thank you to all of you who are listening, watching, or consuming this content on whatever platform it might well be. And we will join you again in 2 weeks' time. So again, thank you.